After writing 2 transformational books myself and supporting many other beings to do the same, I've become enthralled by the deep and mysterious magic that's activated when we choose to say yes to ourselves and commit to the book writing journey. Of course, we want to inspire change and new perspectives in our readers, but the transformation that happens as an author, both throughout the writing process and by actually releasing your book into the world, is surprisingly potent. I know I've been blindsided in the most disruptive and delicious ways by some of the changes my books have brought into my life. Writing a book is like casting a spell. Although we can never be completely sure what's going to be unleashed during the process, we choose to do it anyway. This Unbound one is a heroic journey. Each book has the potential to be a magical portal, a doorway to a new world, both for you and your reader. Each book has a very specific medicine that it's here to share with us. And each book gives us the opportunity to alchemize the magnificent imperfection of our experience into gold. The truth is that anyone can write a book. We could all get a few thousand words down and put them together. But what fascinates me is what happens when we allow the book writing process to go deeper. When we say, fuck it, get naked and dive way down beneath the surface. Letting go of the shoulds and any need to be acceptable, sensible, or approved of. What fascinates me is what happens when we make ourselves fully available to being transformed by the very act of writing a book. This is Unbound Writing, and this is the process we'll be exploring together here in the Unbound Writers Club. I'm Nicola, author and founder of the Unbound Press, and I help magical beings to write the transformational book they're really here to write at this time. I'm your guide here in the Unbound Writers Club, and the aim of this podcast is to help you to feel supported, encouraged, activated as you embark on your book writing journey. Whether you're a first-time author or have many books out in the world, my hope is that you will find something here to inspire you. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Unbound Writers Club. It is our final episode of 2023, and we always like to close out the year with something special. And today we have a love story for you. A love story from one of our amazing authors at the Unbound Press, Moriah Hope. Moriah's book, Labyrinth, came out in October 2022. And, I always talk about the book writing journey being one of transformation. But actually, what happened for Moriah once her book was out in the world, it took her to another level of transformation, particularly in the area of love and relationships. Her whole life has changed since this time last year. So when I was feeling into what would be a really powerful and magical episode for our final one of 2023, I knew that I needed to have a conversation with Moriah. She could tell you this amazing story of what she's experienced. And I feel like we can all take some little snippets, at least, of inspiration from what she's created, what she has allowed, what she has activated in her life over the past 12 months. So without further ado, we are going to dive in, and I hope you enjoy. So Moriah, welcome back to the Unbound Writers Club.
Thank you. Good to be back after a year of Labyrinth being out in the world.
Yeah, a year of all sorts of magic, which we are going to dive into. But I do always begin these conversations with the same question. And I know I've asked you it before, but I'm interested to hear what it means to you, right now, in this moment.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be an unbound writer?
Gosh, that is such a big question with so many different answers. And I'd forgotten that you asked this question at the beginning. What does it mean to me right now to be an unbound writer? Expect the unexpected, I think. Because when I completed Labyrinth last year, I had no inkling of what was round the corner, what was about to happen. So when you say that it's a transformational process and the books are transformational, I knew that it had transformed me in a way that it felt like a real integration of all different aspects of me and different aspects of my life, just writing that series of stories about my life up until that point, just before I turned 60. And what I hadn't anticipated or expected was what was about to happen, how my life would completely transform.
Yeah.
In so many ways, and in magical ways, unexpected ways, how it unfolded and what I would have to respond to, really. And I think in many ways, trusting the process of the book, how the book wanted to be written, which was in a very unbound way, because I didn't expect to write the book about my life. And I didn't know until right at the very end, before I handed you the manuscript, exactly what structure it was going to take, even. So, although I trusted myself through most of my life and my intuition, the book was like the very physical, fast manifestation of that. And that, I think, helped me to trust how life unfolded this year.
Yeah.
To let life and love lead. So I let the book lead last year, and I let life and love lead this year.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yeah, question. Yeah, expected the unexpected. Once you've written your book, it is a bit like, it's not quite Pandora's box, but it is. It's like unleashing a magic
Yeah.
on the world for yourself, as much as for all the people who've written to me and said that Labyrinth has helped them through different parts of their life, or something has happened as a result of reading it. Yeah, it certainly did unleash a lot of magic for me.
Yes, it did. It did. And it's been like such a joy to witness it over this year. And that's why I wanted us to have this conversation. I love the way you talk there about your book. And I think each of our books is this like physical manifestation of our experience and our magic that we get to create and birth and send out into the world. But what they do for us, I often talk about the book writing process itself as being transformational, but actually that transformation certainly continues once our books are released.
Absolutely. And I think I'd been used to the magic and the transformation in my work, but I hadn't been used for quite some time. I hadn't been used to that in my personal life and relationships. It had always happened, certainly in the last 10 years, for work, the magic and the unfolding, but not for personal life. So this year was very much around change.
Yeah.
In my personal life and in my family life, and rather than business, because I barely worked. I think compared to the last 3 years and over lockdown, I've barely worked.
Yeah. Which is another interesting piece, because like this year, like I was holding space for you in the Abundant Author Mastermind, which you stepped into, and then thought it was going to be a big year focused on your business, but actually it was like personally that these shifts happen. So let's dive into that. What were your first inklings? And was it kind of like the timing of it at the beginning of this year? Was it end of last year after Labyrinth came out? And obviously you'd had your 60th birthday, so kind of going into a new decade. When did you first start to realise, like there's something happening here?
When did that's a really good question, because there were different things at different levels. So the first inkling I had that this year was going to be very different, I suppose, was when at the end of last year, I was looking into kind of shamanically and visionary into this year, and I couldn't see a thing, couldn't see anything. And that's really unusual. I normally have some kind of inkling about where I'm going, where the business is going, but I didn't have an inkling at all, had nothing. And then at some point in January, things started to shake up. So I'd given myself some time off over Christmas and after writing the book, because I was quite tired. And in January, one of my closest friends, I realised that he was dying. He had a brain tumour, and I realised then that it wasn't going to get any better. that he was dying. My mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. My parents got burgled through that process as well. A car went into the back of me, so that kind of shook me up. And a couple of other things happened that meant that I didn't work. I actually needed to take time out to go and be with my friend, to see him, to support my mum, to help her through that process, to sort out the car. So all those bits and bobs of life that I hadn't expected happened. And I remember at some point, I don't remember where I was or when exactly it was, but I remember the physical feeling of, it was like, the only way I can describe it was like all of a sudden, it felt like my energy field was a field of Jenga. It's the best way I can describe it. It felt like giant chunks were taken out of my energy field. New chunks were put in. It was rearranged. It was like the whole energy field being turned upside down, inside out, back to front, all at once. Literally like a game of mad Jenga. And I've never, ever experienced anything like that in all my 20 years of working with energy. I've not experienced it with a client. I've not experienced it for me. And it was like, holy shit, what's happening this year? It was like, oh my goodness, something mega is about to kick off. And I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
Other than the fact, I was going through shock at my friend's illness and the fact that he was dying and I was saying goodbye to him. I was going through shock with my mum and her cancer and the fact that she's the carer of my dad. So all of that home situation was thrown up. I think I had a bit of shock from the car accident. So I think in terms of the shock process and me not working, it gave time for all of that energy to shift around. And then I suppose towards the end of March, I had a real clear moment of, okay, what I have in relationship is not what I want. Things need to change and I need to sort out what was going on or not going on. And I remember I'd just finished running a retreat in Palma, Mallorca, at the end of March. And I got to the airport and something had triggered me. And I just thought, you know what? This is not what I want. This is what I want. So I got my notebook out. And about 9 o'clock at Palma Airport, I was scribbling away like a mad woman about what I wanted in relation to love, in relation to relationship, in relation to a man, in relation to love. And I think up until that point, I hadn't done it because somewhere in my head, I was thinking, well, it's just not possible.
Yeah.
It's just not possible. I've been working on myself for years. I've been working with different partners, ex-husband for years, and I just don't seem to get what I want in one person. So, and maybe it's just not possible. And I'd come to a point of acceptance where I was really loving myself fully, regardless of what was going on anywhere else, and looking after myself and looking after my energy. I loved the work that I'd been doing. I was really happy on so many levels. So it wasn't that I was unhappy. I just in this moment of, I don't know what it was. It just came over me. I scribbled away at this list and there was about 40 different qualities. And I thought, well, crikey, if he measures up to all of that, not thinking that anything was going to happen at all, quite honestly. But within 5 minutes of writing that list, this guy, Julian, started to message me to ask me how the retreat had gone on. Now, up until this point, and beyond this point, actually, we'd just been exchanging messages about, I don't know, the first message was the 15th of December last year. So it's almost a year. And intuitively, I put out on Facebook, would anyone like a single card reading using my cards? And he said, yes, please. So that was the very first message connection. And then fast forward a few months, something about orchids. We ended up, we both somehow got the same orchid, same color, from the same shop, same size. And he didn't know how to look after orchids and was on Facebook asking if anyone had any advice. So I put my hand up, yes, I know about orchids. And then kind of every few weeks, there was this contact up until this point where I was running the retreat. And literally he messaged within minutes. And I thought, well, that's odd. And he kept me company through the whole of that time waiting in the airport, just exchanging friendly messages for a couple of hours. So I thought, well, that's nice. Gosh, that's really nice. Didn't think any more of it really until I suppose it was late April, early May, when the frequency of our messages started to increase slightly. And by the middle of May, he got into a rhythm of sending me a song every day, which was really sweet. So it's almost like being serenaded in the mornings. I'd wake up and there would be a song waiting for me. Not him singing it, I hasten to add, but from YouTube. And so it was a kind of a slow, gentle unfolding until the middle of May, when I realized actually there was something else going on, and my heart was telling me there was a lot more to this than I had imagined. And there was one particular song that he sent me one morning, and it just burst. My heart just went bang, burst. And it was just before I went off to stay with my friend in the States. And for the rest of that month, it was just very clear that there was this deeper love and connection that was developing. So for the first 6 months, I guess there was this kind of slow, gradual mutual trust and respect growing. So that when we got to this point of deeper connection, that had already been built, even though we'd never met. And at that point, we hadn't even video messaged, but we had been messaging and leaving voice messages. And it's funny, you know, because this time last year, as a thank you to the card reading that I did for him, he sent me one of his films. And the film is, we now walk that particular route quite regularly with the dog. Now, I remember thinking, because this film was about the winter solstice and Mother Nature, etc. And I remember thinking and watching it, it was only a few minutes, but I remember thinking, wow, what would it be like to be with a guy who is emotionally connected and connected to nature and creativity and has a voice like that and can make a film like that? Life be like if I was with a guy like that.
You got to find out.
And I got to find out, yeah. Because, you know, following my intuition and intuitive whisperings, I just had a message one day, leave where I was living, pack up within the week, put your stuff in storage, or leave within a week. And then I went into action and I organised a space for me to live in for 3 months. I organised storage units. So I packed and left where I was living within a week.
I remember that time. You were getting on a call and just like, oh, okay, this is, and we were like, what? What's going on?
What? Well, up until that point, up until the middle of May, I had no inkling that this connection was so deep at all, really, or that it was going to influence my life so much. I had no inkling whatsoever. So it was only, a couple of weeks before I did that. So it seemed very fast, felt very fast.
Yeah.
It was really.
Yeah, because you hadn't even met in person.
I hadn't even met in person when this came through, but then we met in person at the summer solstice, and just the excitement was off the scale. I can't, I wish sometimes when you wish you could bottle something, bottle the feeling, because I remember being so excited driving to meet him. And when we met, I just remember touching and hugging and squeezing him, his arms especially. It's like, wow, you're real. You're real. This is real. It's not some imagined thing that I've written or dreamt about, or at some level I had dreamt about it actually, because I remember with my relationships thinking, well, the very first long-term relationship, we connected really well physically and emotionally, but not particularly mentally. And I wasn't particularly soulful at the time or spiritual. Then the next one really was probably physical and mental and a bit of soulful. And so it continued. It's almost like I wanted to plug in all levels. I wanted to connect to all levels. And I couldn't quite get the plug in. It was like, oh, it's not quite working. And thought I'd have to settle for what I had. But with this one, we connect on all of those levels. And so it brings a whole new dimension to life, really.
And you talk about like, wishing you could bottle that feeling, and actually like being in your presence this year, like particularly when all of this was like, first, well, not first, but that time when it was like, yes, like I'm leaving, and then you met, and
oh, by the way, I've just moved to Cornwall.
I know, and it's like, oh yeah, just moved completely. The feeling, it was like I could feel it. I know we could each feel it in the Abundant Author Mastermind. It was like, wow, it was just a joy to actually witness and be in connection with it. Like the energy of it was really, really powerful.
It was. Of course, what I haven't mentioned through this is the work that I was being guided to do at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
That was running parallel with it. So I joined the Abundant Author Mastermind, assuming that I would be building on the book and the experience of writing the book. Maybe a new book would come through, and that's what it would be about. Of course, it wasn't. It wasn't that at all. Expect the unexpected yet again. I remember waking up sometime around February, March, maybe, with the phrase "awaken the Venus frequency." And so I started to just meditate on that. And it became really clear that the Venus frequency is an energetic vibrational frequency held within our energy field, and you can access it and awaken it at any point. And so I started working with that personally. So this is in parallel with these conversations and connections that were going on. And then I remember at one point, which was hysterical, because I remember being on one of those meditations on the mastermind group, and the School of Love came through. And I just remember my instant response was, oh, that's too sickly sweet. That's too corny. I'm not doing that. And then the irony is, of course, that I was going through the School of Love. It was me that was having to learn and soften and allow, because I could have just said no. I could have said, no, I've got a really settled life. I've got my routine, thank you very much, in Sussex. And it's all known and it's all settled. And yet this feeling and this knowing was so strong. And the intuitive messages were so strong that I couldn't ignore what was going on, to the point that I just surrendered and let go. And then I remember in June or July, I got the message about Love Fest, which was funny because it was like, create a Love Fest in July. And, I had this idea about the time when there's all these festivals going on, I could run a group that was about attuning to love and awaken the Venus frequency.
Yeah.
But actually it was about me. It was about me learning where all of those nooks and crannies inside of me were not open to love or being loved or receiving love or being supported. So many of us, I think, as women are, I don't know whether we're brought up or programmed or belief or just sheer experience means that we are so independent that, earning our own money, standing our ground, because such a focus for me, especially on being empowered, empowering myself and not being disempowered. And it just meant what I hadn't realized was that my edges, there were quite some harsh edges there around what I was willing to accept or not. So it was a real eye-opener that I had become that independent and that, I would say, rigid almost, but I hadn't realized that in becoming so empowered and so independent and so strong, that more vulnerable, softer side of me as a woman, as the female energy, the soft feminine energy, actually needed some care.
Yeah.
So softening into vulnerability, into being loved unconditionally, and noticing where other people had put conditions on that love, or I'd put conditions on that love. Receiving unconditionally, so even receiving financially. I'd always earned money, even through when my kids were little, I was earning and supporting myself and them and contributing. May not have been doing it all myself, but I was certainly contributing a big share of it. To suddenly then, know that I needed to take 3 or 4 months off because that massive change, although it was a knowing and it was clear, landing here in Cornwall, the energy was so different.
Yeah.
So different. And being in a space where I knew nobody, pretty much nobody, and nowhere, it was quite disorienting. So
Yeah.
again, that whole thing around change and shock has its place in transformation, because in the shock and the newness of things, you're starting to reorient yourself. And it's like, well, who am I? What's
Yeah.
happened? It's almost like the Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy is picked up in the tornado.
Totally.
Plonk down somewhere else.
Yeah.
It felt a bit like that.
Yeah. Well, it felt like that even from the outside. It's like this uprooting. It was like, one minute you're here.
It was,
absolutely.
Like,
and then you are like plonked down in Cornwall with Julian. And it was like,
totally uprooted. I know. What are you doing?
I know. Disorientation and really allowing yourself to land.
So my family especially were looking at me as if to say, oh my goodness, are you okay? Who is this man? What's going on? She's lost the plot completely now. But as soon as they saw us together, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
They knew that, I think almost all of them knew when they first saw us together. And certainly in the early days, the friends who met us knew. They could just see that it just looked so right, felt so right. So I still can't quite get my head around it. And I have done some mad things in my life. I have followed intuition like that before, but I don't think it's been quite so dramatic. I want to use the word, but I don't even know it's dramatic. I can't quite find the words for it. So in a year that I was encouraged to awaken love, what also happened was that I let love lead and love found me. And then looking back over it, when we've talked, there have been quite a lot of synchronicities. We both grew up in roughly the same area. We were born in the same year. His mom lived literally within 5 minutes of where my grandparents lived. We both had similar connections in St Albans, which was, part way from where we were living. We both spent, there's a particular hotel where I had my wedding night with my first husband, and then he got married there. It's just crazy kind of connections. He was ending a relationship just as my book was being published. I'm going backwards and forwards on the timeline, but there have been lots and lots of synchronicities and connections and sliding door type moments that are there.
Magical. It's interesting, that piece about your family and people knowing that it was right when they saw you together. Actually, I think it was just last week, because every now and again I've been like, mentioned you to Mr. H, like, because you're so so inspiring. And he was like, oh, well, have you got a picture? Like, you can have a look. He wanted to see both of you. So I managed to find one of you together, and he was like, oh, yeah. And I mean, Mr. H can be a bit cynical when it comes to
love and romance.
Yeah, he can. But he was like, he could see it. He spotted it. And it's like, it's just such a beautiful story. And I know, of course, there's the story of it, but also actually having to live it. And we still have the sense of being uprooted from one place and landing another, and then creating a life together.
It's a little crazy at times. So the knowing was absolute, and then the living of it was. He describes it as easy, but then I guess he was in Cornwall all of that time. His life changed because I landed in it, and he'd really put out there that he wanted a loving relationship. He often says he didn't choose me. Life chose me for him. Whereas, me being, he's a manifesting generator in human design. I'm a generator. So I did my list spontaneously and with feeling. And he did his, I want a loving relationship generalization thing.
Yeah.
And life brought us together. Now, I wonder whether, I often talk about the design. I suspect it was always in the design that this was possible, but we had to go through certain hoops and inner development and transformation and willingness, because not everybody would be willing, I think, to do what I did. It looks a bit mad from the outside, especially at 60. It's like, really?
I just love it.
Found love at 60. Yeah, just like that. But then the living of it is, there were quite a lot of tears on my part around just relief, I think, actually, just relief. It's like, oh my goodness. And the reality that this love was here, and was I willing to yield and accept it? And what did that mean moving forwards? You know, having to accept the fact I was now, instead of an hour away, I was now 4 hours away from my sons and friends, because I'd built up quite a big collection of friends in Sussex. So I've had to change mindsets, but this has all been part of this thing, that I've had to change mindsets and paradigms. And, you know, I found myself at one point driving down in the middle of the night to Cornwall because I was up, awake, and the energy was there. So I thought, well, let's just get in the car. I was thinking, I would never have done this a year ago. I'm doing things I would never have done. So but it is different. So you're navigating, we know each other on so many levels. And yet the day-to-day stuff around cooking and managing money and teens, and now, you know, he's got a dog, so I'm adjusting to being a dog owner, and, you know, it's all of those things. I never thought I'd have a dog, really. I'm not really a doggy person.
Yeah.
But and each other's families, our families seem to, you know, warm to both of us, which is nice.
Yeah.
Which is important to both of us, actually, because it was issues before another relationship. So it's really important that happens.
So what would you say, looking back to Moriah at the beginning of 2023? No idea, really.
I can remember her.
I guess because there might be people listening to this who, you know, are looking for love or some other kind of transformation in their life. And I just wonder kind of what is a key piece of advice that you would have given to, like, Moriah almost 12 months ago, or to anyone else?
Yeah, well, Moriah 12 months ago wasn't even looking for love. I think that was part of it, actually. Yeah. Love found me. I think what I had done, though, is I had come to peace with all those parts of me that I hadn't come to peace with. And writing the book was part of that process. Very, very clear to me that those 3 months I spent writing the book, Labyrinth, my journey to belonging, actually brought me to my journey. That was my journey of belonging. It was the final piece of that part of the jigsaw. It was almost like the book closed at that point. That was the closing of that part of my life, and a new book started to open. So I would say doing the integration work, the inner work, is essential, and loving ourselves regardless of what's going on around us. So, you know, I got to the point in my last relationship really where we were cohabiting, and we'd been through all sorts of stages over decades, because we knew each other as colleagues and then friends, and then we got together in a relationship, and then really it kind of spiraled back into cohabitation. I'd kind of accepted that in some ways, but I was loving myself. I started to love myself in a whole new way, thinking, well, I can't even remember the thinking, but I knew that that's what was going on. Yeah. Really, really loving myself, regardless of any response from anybody else, from anywhere else. I was me. I was authentically me, and I loved all parts of me, and I was totally at peace with all parts of me. And then, of course, I got really the distraction of, which seems a bit strange to call it a distraction now, but with Isaac passing and my mum's cancer, which actually was, thank goodness, it was amazingly straightforward. Even she says that she can't believe she had it and went through surgery and everything else. Yeah, I'm not even sure I can answer your question on that one, really. So people have been coming to me and been asking for sessions and how, you know, what was my formula for what happened. And I guess the formula was really to follow my intuition and the self-love piece.
Yeah. And write a book.
Write a book. I never expected to write that book. I was expecting to write another book. I'd finished writing a book, let's face it, and this book appeared. It's like, oh, okay, we're doing a different book.
Yeah.
We've spent 3 months writing that book. And ironically, the 3 months that I spent writing this book were the same 3 months that I spent landing in relationship this year. So my life seems to be in chunks between certain almost sacred times of the year. So last year I wrote it pretty much summer solstice through to the equinox or thereabouts. And, I met Julian in person for the first time on the summer solstice this year. So I'm not sure that, I would say self-love.
Yeah, definitely.
And being at peace with your life. And I guess being clear about what you want. I mean, there was that piece around writing a list.
Yeah.
I was so clear, so clear of what I wanted. And I don't think I'd ever been quite so clear, or it wasn't even that I thought I could get it. I just was so clear what I wanted because I was so clear what I didn't want.
Yeah.
Contrast was, okay, well, I really don't want what's going on right now, but what I do want is this. And I've still got the paper. Wow. It sits on my altar. So it's 3 pages of A5 notebook, scribbled qualities.
Amazing.
Most of which fits.
Everyone's going to be doing that. There's something about being in an airport. I mean, I could talk to you about this all day, and I know we have to come to a close, but I remember actually when I was on the way back from a retreat about 4 years ago, when I was like calling in the team for the Unbound press and just like in a few minutes just writing down exactly what I thought we needed and wanted, and then within a few months these people started to appear. So there's something about being in an airport after some kind of transformational experience.
Absolutely. And I remember there was one particular night on this retreat in Palma where the sunset was pink, and we were we were in Puerto de Palenza, and the energy was so strong. It was so divine feminine. This beautiful pink sunset at the end of March. It was pretty warm, which is unusual. And I remember feeling, wow, this energy is amazing. And going back there the next day, because assuming it would still be there, and of course it wasn't, to then sitting in the airport and then the whole thing around the Venus frequency. I mean, it was just magical how it all happened.
Yeah.
But only now looking back on it can I connect the dots. I couldn't see what was happening at the time.
No. Well, we've had this conversation where I feel like it definitely has to be another book, Moriah. We need to go and get all of this down.
No, I don't know. I have no idea. Lots of people are asking me, when's the book out? So I haven't even thought about what that would be yet. I am going to be pulling together a group probably at this winter solstice about love. Not quite sure what that will look like. And next year, I'm definitely going to be working with groups, relationships, families, constellations, soul groups, businesses around clearing pathways and energies to magic, transformation, and love.
Beautiful.
So I think that's how it's going to manifest next year.
And also expect the unexpected. So
expected, indeed.
Oh, Moriah, it's just been a joy to speak with you about that. Like I said, I could talk about it all day. We'll probably have to have another conversation at some point when the book comes out. No pressure. For those listening who want to find out more about you and your work and any new offerings that you're creating, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Probably the best way is to connect with me on Facebook or Instagram. I have a website, but I hardly ever use it.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these people, I don't have a sales funnel at the moment. I don't even have a newsletter. So usually on Facebook or Instagram is the best way to do it until and if I get myself organised to do all of those other traditional marketing things.
Well, I don't think you need to be honest. Like, you're creating enough magic just through your being. So we'll make sure those details are in the show notes so people can connect with you. And
brilliant.
Thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation and closing out our year in the Unbound Writers Club. It's been such a pleasure to hold space for you this year and just witness all of the magic unfolding, and just very excited to see what's next.
And thank you. That Abundant Author Mastermind was such an important part of that puzzle that again, you just don't know what's going to happen to you when you step into, certainly in one of your containers.
No. I should put that on the sales page.
I think that's the new catchphrase.
It is.
You can't anticipate what's going to happen. And if you think you know what's going to happen, it's probably not. It's going to be something else that is completely out of sight that is going to happen. But whatever it is, it's always going to be magical. So thank you as well for holding that space and for sharing the joy. When none of it was public, I could share it in the group, which was lovely.
Yeah.
Very special.
Oh, well, it was special for all of us. So thank you so much. And here's to more magic in 2020.
Yeah, can't wait. Thank you.
What do you do when you want to write a book, but the usual approaches are leaving you feeling restricted, pressurized, not at all enough, and pretty dry, to be honest? You find another way, of course. And if you are listening to this, my free unconventional book writing guide is going to be perfect for you. It's designed especially for soul-led coaches, healers, and mentors who want to write a transformational book without spending hours on end chained to a desk. In it, I'm giving you my unique spin on the top 10 questions I hear from would-be authors, and it's going to help you liberate the way you write forever. Download your free copy of the guide now over at nicolahumber.com/10, the number 10, 10 hyphen questions.